is to talk a little bit about kind of, where we've been. We've hit this nice 3-year sort of window with WealthShare, which when we were first getting going was definitely something that was communicated is, get those first few years behind you and build that foundation. And then it seems like out in the world, it does open different doors. So we're really excited about that. So this evening, we're going to talk a little bit about like how the last year went, what is happening out there in the marketplace. There's a lot of different challenges. There's a lot of opportunities as well. And we're going to talk about where we think there is opportunity, where we are analyzing opportunities right now, and the types of properties and things that we think could be good to watch for this upcoming year. And this could be helpful too if you are a real estate investor and wanting to get out there and acquire your own active real estate as well. So hopefully we'll give you some food for thought. Before we jump in, I just noticed before we start, I'm missing on this presentation my disclaimer slide. So I'll just take a short moment to mention that anything we do discuss this evening is for educational purposes only. This is not a solicitation for an investment, though at the end of the presentation, we will throw up the WealthShare offering just to give you that little snapshot. But tonight is really more about what's going on, where have we been in the last kind of year, and what we're excited about. So with that, I will jump right into kind of what you can kind of expect from us. So we're going to do kind of a review of our values. We're going to do a trustee review because we have added a new trustee in the last year. And then we're going to dive into what's next for us. So I think it's important, given we have a few years now under our belts, to review who we are, what our values are, and what we stand for here. And I think one of the first and foremost things that does make us different is the first thing here on the slides, which is accessibility to opportunities. When we first started WealthShare, there wasn't a lot of groups or funds out there that were allowing a accessible minimum investment. And I would say our investors really fall into two buckets, which is either the brand new to real estate investing, or their new to investing period, or our more higher net worth accredited investors. And we really appreciate and think WealthShare works well for both of those types of people. But going back a few years ago, most funds and groups, their minimums were 50K, 100K. I've seen some that are, much higher than that as well. And we really wanted to be the opposite to that. So we want to be accessible. And so we still have our minimum of $5,000, which we set out with in day one. It's been really cool to see people reinvest now from that first investment and keep kind of topping up and making WealthShare a part of their annual financial review. So that's something we're really proud of. We have people also implementing the Smith maneuver with WealthShare and having it as part of their monthly even review of what's going on in their portfolio. So being accessible, that's really important to us, and that will always be a core value of who we are. The second one, which is really, really critical, is transparency. And the one benefit to our investors of this structure with a REIT structure, an offering memorandum, is what we are required to do in terms of compliance. And the first one is an independent annual financial audit. Our auditors are Grant Thornton, and we take great pride in being as transparent as possible to our investors. So if you are one of our investors, every year our audited financials are available on our EMD's platform for your review. We have just kind of got to the tail end of our audit here for the previous year, another year of clean audit. So well done, Monique, and the hard work that has gone into that. So the financials will be updated there. And if you go onto the Atlas One platform, which is our EMD, you can also see them if you choose to go check those out. So that's a big one, the financial audit. Where's the money going? What's happening on an annual basis? The second one is the Board of Trustees. And this is also a big one if you're looking at WealthShare or other groups to see who is the board, because oftentimes the board is just the initial founders and no independent trustees or no variety of trustees. This was something that we spent a lot of time on in terms of like trying to find a diverse board of trustees. And that's something that we are pretty excited about that we do have. So we have the three of us as co-founders, myself, Rodney, and Monique. And then we have three other trustees as well, with Sean Wilson, Kyle Hampson, and Eve Gay. And they all bring different levels of experience to us that we don't necessarily have. So Kyle is a lawyer. Eve Gay is highly connected into the construction space. So he gets a lot of calls from us regarding some things of, a nature of how we can repair something or look at something or what does he think of something. So that helps a lot. And then Sean Wilson has extensive experience in building a company from the ground up, which is a totally different skill set. So we highly value this diverse board that we have, and every major decision that we make is made up by the board, not just the three of us as the original founders. And then as we continue to grow, this also segregates duties. So it's not just one person making every single decision along the way. So we do have segregated duties here, and that will continue to grow as we grow as a group. So that's something that we are continually working on. And something that we are really excited about is our slogan, Built by Investors for Investors, has been something that we've been using since day one, and it is now officially trademarked. So we can get that little R on there, which I should have here. And so you're going to see us really leaning into that and using that more and more. But that's something that we're excited about because that really speaks to who we are. We are real estate investors just like you guys, and bring that experience to us as operators. And then the last piece to our values is that this is not a race. We're always looking at long-term viewpoint. So whether we're looking at the opportunities or the people we're working with, it's always a long-term view. So I do want to shine a light on Kyle Hampson as our most recent trustee addition to the team. He was added last spring, but we didn't really, I think, maybe spend the time on this that we should have. But he did join us March of 2025. He's a partner and experienced lawyer at Mackenzie Lake Lawyers. So this is awesome experience for us. And we just want to say thank you to Kyle for being on our board of trustees as a fully independent trustee as well. And I've known Kyle for going over 10 years now through the Keyspire network. So we're excited to have him. So reflecting a little bit on 2025, what happened and why? We spent a lot of time focusing on stability and efficiency. If you're in the real estate market in any way, you're a real estate investor, you've been paying attention, you probably know that here in Alberta, the market was pretty overheated in terms of really high rental rates being projected, really high sales rates. And honestly, we reviewed so many acquisitions and nothing made sense. Everything was concerning because of a couple things. So when the rental market is overheated, what that means is valuations or appraisals on multifamily buildings come in quite high because the valuation on a property is based off of the net operating income that it's taking in. And so if you felt that, or we felt that that rental market, was going to stay stable and growing long term, then that would be one thing. But what us as a team know is that what Alberta does well is respond to demand. We respond very well to new construction demand, to housing demand, like we have seen. We've seen significant population growth here in Alberta over the last few years, and which is great. That is awesome. And what we are good at compared to other provinces, I would suggest, is that we do, remove red tape. We push projects through. But what that does mean, though, is that a lot of supply can hit the market relatively quickly. So what we know is that because the rental market was overheated, it wasn't going to stay like that. It wasn't going to be this long-term consistent trend. We were seeing a height of the market in terms of rental rates, which in commercial real estate meant height of the market in terms of valuations. And so what we don't want to do is buy an acquisition and see these things come down, right? So timing is everything in this space. Again, we take a conservative approach always. We're not just going to buy a building just to buy it. And no acquisition was made intentionally for these reasons. I think what's going to be exciting is what's coming this year as a result of that. So I'll kind of tie some of that into my next slides here. But conservative approach, long-term buy and hold strategy is is still the name of the game. That's not going to change here with this fund. But I think our experience as landlords here in Calgary for, decades, shows that we know how quickly our markets can adjust. And we need to be forward thinking, not just looking at the next, few months. And so I do think we made a very good decision by not looking at some of these acquisitions, though there was some nice real estate. But I think the opportunities could be arising this year, which is what we're excited about. What we did focus on in terms of the acquisitions we have, like I mentioned earlier, was being really efficient and uh, really fine tuning every dollar as much as we possibly could. And then we made it a mission to really spend a lot of time out on the road, sharing what WealthShare is all about, sharing what we are doing. As you can see, there's a couple photos there out at events. We went to multiple conferences from Toronto to Vancouver, all kinds of things. And we host a lot of our own events as well, because that's our other value proposition, is definitely on the education side, sharing what we're doing. This is one little thing I wanted to mention as well that we are proud of internally is the Wealth Professional Awards. Is in June every year in Toronto, and Wealth Professional Canada did recognize us in two different groups in the last year, and it's really interesting to see when you go to these events. I mean, really, we were surrounded by the largest funds and REITs in this country, and it was really inspiring to be even included in those lists and to be a part of those rooms with such impressive people and human beings. And so we will continue to stay tied into the Wealth Professional Canada community. Okay, so let's talk about 2026. I think we're all feeling uncertainties in terms of global economics, local economics. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. There's a lot of fear. And I think, what history has taught us is sticking to those fundamentals is key. So thinking long term, thinking about the economics that we know are reliable in terms of what we can predict. There's a whole lot of things we can't predict, but what can we predict? And that's people, that's employment here locally. Where do people want to live? How can we be a good housing provider? How can we use financing and different ways you can structure these deals to our ability. So we are consistently just reminding ourselves to think long term, have a long term approach, and to stick to the basic fundamentals of what history has kind of taught us. So where is the opportunity this year? I kind of mentioned how last year things were definitely overheated, and I think there's a few things to talk about here. Number one is new construction. I talked about. And a lot of new construction is happening inside of Calgary and Edmonton, which is where we focus here in Alberta, up till now anyway. And they are in, small multifamily buildings, like 8-plexes, 10-plexes, 12-plexes. And what I want to watch really closely this year when it comes to those projects in particular that are built by smaller builders is there might be some defaults happening here. And the reason I think there's going to be defaults, not might, I know, because they're already happening. And the reason they're happening is most of those smaller projects, like up to, 20 some units, almost all of them are using CMHC insured financing for the construction, but then also for the end user. So the end user could be an investor who wanted to buy their first multifamily asset. And I think I have a thing talking about CMHC, but the MLI Select program, in my opinion, has created a lot of risk out there in the marketplace. And a lot of these buyers have contracts in place for these multi-unit, like townhomes with suites type of product that are unable to close for two main reasons. Number one is they were sold a bit of a fallacy around 5% down. And this is something that I have a big problem with, how these are marketed out in the marketplace. Because if you're not aware, how CMHC values their properties is based on how they value it. So they take a very conservative look. It's not based on what your purchase price is, it's based on the net operating income that the property is going to generate. And they also have their own markers of the expenses that you are likely to incur, even if you don't intend to use some of them. And so what that means is, as as two things happen. Rental markets are coming down, so rents are coming down, which is going to lower net operating income. CMHC's job is to always maintain risk as well. So they're being conservative as well because they know there's lots of construction happening. And so what's happening with these projects is they may be nearing completion. The end user is getting their certificate of insurance, and they now need to come up with 15% down instead of the 5 that they were promised. So that's a result again of net operating income being lower than expected, and appraisals at the end of the construction period coming in lower than expected because, as I said, rents were higher likely when they wrote the contract. So what does that mean? That means there's going to be opportunities for people who can solve some problems. So that might mean being able to close quickly, being able to maybe join forces. It could mean a lot of different things to prevent these projects from, getting into further trouble. The builders may have to find a new end user on a quick turnaround. The individuals on these deals may be looking for partners. So there'll be all kinds of different things. So that's one chunk of issues that we are seeing on these CMHC insured deals. The other issue is net worth requirements. And if you've been following the CMHC changes over the last 5 years, what you have probably seen is that CMHC is always changing the goalpost in terms of their policies, their rules, their requirements. And I'm seeing a lot of posts online, as maybe you are too, for people looking for net worth qualified partners. And what that means is these people have a contract in place. They now don't have the appropriate net worth to be able to satisfy CMHC and their lender in order to close. So another avenue where we're going to see things come up, which could be opportunistic, let's say, for buyers who are able to problem solve in those situations this year. So that is something we are watching very, very closely. And there is new build projects from townhomes all the way up to apartment buildings that we have been monitoring now for a couple of years. And I think this year and into next year too, this is something to watch very, very closely. So we definitely think there's going to be opportunity there. Again, this being our backyard, experience is really key here in terms of where, because a lot of people ask, well, where should I buy? Where should I look in Calgary, or where is good? And this is really important too when you think about Alberta's largest cities, especially the ring around the outside. If you're familiar with Alberta, we have no shortage of land here. You can stand on the outskirts of Calgary and see as far as you can see for farmland, and that farmland will eventually become future developments. And so what we know is when construction is flying like that we don't really want to be in the outskirts of the city competing with, all kinds of other projects. So right now, and something I've been talking about the last couple of years is focusing more on established communities is really what's going to pay off because the competition in the exterior suburbs, like the ring around the outside of the city, is going to be massive right now. I am going to have a slide on rental market stats as well here that Kaylee, our property manager, did pull together. So that's a big thing. There is some projects I'm seeing in Calgary, for example, that were approved developments with zero parking whatsoever. I don't know about you, but no matter how nice or how cheap that building gets, zero parking is a problem for Alberta. And so what you're going to see on those buildings is the sale price is going to continue to come down. Now, honestly, something with no parking is not something we're interested in, period. But that's a good example too of in terms of where the opportunity could be. Because what's happened as well is a lot of the rest of Canada has seen a lot of struggle with their real estate market, real estate developments in the last few years. And so what that meant was developers across Canada were looking around going, where should we go? And Calgary and Edmonton did attract a lot of external developers doing projects here in our cities. And what I can say is a lot of them that I've looked at don't speak to experience of being a landlord in the city for decades. They are, they may work great in Toronto or Vancouver, where it's a landlocked, city that relies heavily on public transportation. It just doesn't work the same way here. So, I think there will be some cautionary tales and some lessons learned on some of those projects this year. But again, could mean some opportunity for somebody else. Townhouses versus apartments for us, we have really enjoyed our townhouses. They, from a management perspective, from a cost perspective to maintain, have done incredibly well. So we are consistently looking at both of these things, but our immediate sort of thing in front of us right now is looking at like, okay, what has worked well for us and how can we repeat that? So great thing about townhouses is there's no elevators, there's no parkade, there is no lawn to deal with, no snow removal, and just the cost to maintain it and operationally speaking is significantly easier. So apartment buildings, of course, have their benefits as well, but townhouses remain equally of interest to us. We absolutely still are very interested in townhomes. The one thing with CMHC when it comes to townhomes, though, that is a challenge and will be something we have to look at differently this year is, again, another change by CMHC is we can no longer use the MLI Select program for townhomes that are like individually titled, even if they're in a row. If it was on one title, that would be fine. But if they are individually titled, like we have done historically, our Edmonton project has 16 titles. We can no longer do that with CMHC. But what we are looking at is, being diverse and maybe looking at conventional financing this year could make sense. Putting a little bit more money down than you would need to with CMHC, not having to contend with CMHC period might be a nice change of pace. So that's actually something we are working with actively right at this moment with our lender is we have an opportunity that we like. What if we just go conventional and not deal with CMHC on this next one? So I think we might see more of that as well because the goalpost changing with CMHC has become a problem for a lot of people. And the last point here, kind of like what we're always thinking about in terms of acquisitions, next steps, what we want to do is our focus is two things for our investors is to have continuous net worth growth for you. So the growth that you see in the unit price here at WealthShare, that we want a consistent growth there for you and to be protecting your capital as much as possible. In times of volatility that we are seeing right now, hard assets continue to be, and real estate being one of them, continue to be the place that are, especially more sophisticated investors look to in times of volatility. So those two components, buying real estate that's making money from day one, long-term buy and hold strategy will really play well into those two goals of net worth growth and protection of capital inside of hard assets. So that's kind of the things that we are focused on into 2026. So let's talk a little bit about the Calgary rental market. I kind of mentioned obviously that we were very overheated last year and that we have seen a market shift. If you're a landlord, you've probably seen this. So we were in an extremely tight rental market in terms of very low vacancy. And that has really shifted to more to a balanced type of market. So if you look at the changes here, the 1.4% vacancy rate in 2023 as opposed to the 5% in 2025. And this is projected to potentially go up. Now, what I want to say here is this paints the whole city with one brush because it's one kind of market. It's really important when you're looking at rental property or even to buy property is you get more tighter in terms of the areas that you are looking at. So the communities that we are renting in, we have been able to maintain an over 97% occupancy rate for 2025. I believe it was 97 point something. And that is due to the areas they're in, good management, and our property manager, Kaylee, doing a very good job. But we are still seeing more inventory coming. And this is something we have seen before in Calgary. Like I said, more new construction is coming, that there'll be a lot more units added. Now, the majority of these units are in the surrounding areas. If you look at Northeast Calgary in particular, there is hundreds of units coming on at a time in some of these buildings that were purpose-built almost for investors from out of province. And so a lot of those units are coming up on the rental market. So it's important to look at your area more closely that you're going to be competing with. Also, you want to look at the types of product that you are, competing with. So rental growth is slowing. and rents are sort of stabilizing. So balanced type of market. And I do want to point out, this can bring fear in terms of, oh no, like what does this mean for us? And we don't want a market that has a 1.4% vacancy rate from an economic perspective. We want Canadians to want to move to Alberta to live an affordable life and to make something in terms of setting down roots, seeing, the ability to build a business or whatever job they want to do. So having a more balanced rental market is not the end of the world. Could it potentially go a little bit high with all the new construction we have coming in the short term? Possibly. But in the long run, we want to have rental housing available for people to move to our city and to help us keep growing. So some things you are seeing out in the rental market world right now, and if you're a landlord, maybe you're seeing this, is tenant incentives are returning. So if you look at advertisements, you'll see things from discounted rents or move-in incentives or free internet or whatever it might be. And you will continue to see that this year. And we anticipate that. We actually plan for this in terms of our analysis that we are doing right now. We know that this will be part of the rental market. So we just plan for it from day one. Tenant retention becomes a critical component of being a property manager right now. Making sure you're maintaining your assets, keeping a good relationship with your tenants, because they will move if they have a better opportunity somewhere else to have a good landlord and a clean unit and something that's maintained. So maintenance becomes something that's really important that tenants, maybe don't get the choice on when there's not a lot of options for them. But now if there is options, this will become something that they are considering. Just need to have a sip of water. Now, that being said, demand is still strong. We are still seeing continued population growth and interprovincial migration. And I think what's always so interesting too, as a landlord, is the quality of tenant applications that we still are seeing and that we have seen for years here in Calgary, and Edmonton. The kind of caliber of people that our assets attract, but also our cities attract, is a testament to a really exciting economy that is bringing a diverse range of people to our province. It's not just oil and gas workers, for example. It's really across all industries, and that is really exciting to see from a diversification standpoint in terms of what our province is doing here in terms of having a bit more diverse economy. Okay, so we have one big update here I want to talk about. This is a fundamental difference of how we have done things from day one. And we've talked about wanting to do this, but we kind of needed to get those first few years behind us, get our groove going. And historically, how WealthShare has operated is NAV stands for our net asset value. You can relate that to share price. We started initially with a $10 share price. Right at this moment, it is $12.50. But historically, that was only updated once per year. And it was from an operational standpoint, from a cost standpoint, in the first few years, it was just the best way for us to do it, given we were kind of getting going and new to this. We have made the decision to change this to a semi-annual update schedule. I think this is going to be a lot more appealing for our investors. You'll see that growth on a semi-annual basis rather than just once a year, because I do know it feels like a year feels like a long period of time, and you're like, hey, where are things at? So I'm actually really excited about this from a update schedule. So semi-annually now, the net asset value unit price will be updated twice per year and will be expected like spring and fall kind of timeline. So we are, yeah, really excited about that and excited what that will mean for you as the investor to be able to see growth throughout the year, not having to wait one full year. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about risks and mitigation and kind of, so I think these are some of the things that people are concerned about. I know out in the marketplace, there has been, just in the world globally and locally, there's a lot of concern. But even inside of the real estate landscape, inside of the raising capital world, we've talked a lot about, how we can do better as investors, as capital raisers. And I think it's important to talk, though, about like what is WealthShare doing to actually mitigate risk for you as the investor, if you already invested with us, or if you're considering investing with us. So, first one is geography. Now, we are going to be focused on the prairies. That is going to be our thing here at WellShare for sure. However, what I didn't talk about on the opportunities as well was our properties right now are located in Calgary and Edmonton. We also believe, from a geography standpoint, looking at the secondary markets around these major cities and also into Saskatchewan is a very good idea. And there's a couple things that we're not quite ready to talk about yet, but we have been working on for quite some time that are outside of Calgary and then also into Saskatchewan. So that geography, being diverse, not having all your assets in the same community of the same property type is something that is done intentionally. And then we also do regular market reviews and really spend a lot of time exploring how we can be better diverse within and outside of Alberta. A lot of people ask why just the prairies, and from an operations standpoint, at least how things are today, Ontario and British Columbia specifically present too much risk from a property management standpoint, in our opinion, that what we want to deliver here to be consistent and take care of the assets the way that we want to. So BC and Ontario have a very different world when it comes to legislation on the management side, which we actually think would be a risk in terms of being able to deliver the consistent results that we want to and that we know we can do. Saskatchewan is quite favorable, though, and very similar to Alberta in that way. So market and economic risk, this is something that, if you've been watching Alberta for decades, I mean, this is something that we have seen here. We have seen a lot of real estate cycles. I joke a lot about how the real estate cycles here in Alberta have also taught us a lot, though, because we have seen every type of market condition. And but this is something we're constantly watching. So what is the risk? Market and economic risk in terms of job growth, people moving here. The first fundamental thing about real estate is following the people, right? Because the people are your tenants, they're your clients. So what is happening in terms of job growth? And in looking at, Calgary and Edmonton specifically, Calgary has more diversification than Edmonton has in our experience in terms of the types of tenants we are attracting and the different job forces that they are in. Our Edmonton tenants definitely are more reliant on the energy sector. So we all agree the energy sector is a huge part of our economy and is not going anywhere. However, what I think is really exciting in Calgary over the last several years is the amount of diversification we are seeing, not just in Calgary, even around Calgary. A few highlights in Alberta is in Red Deer, there is the new flour mill that is underway under construction. We are opening a drywall plant east of Calgary. We are manufacturing airplanes east of Calgary. These are huge industries on top of finance and tech and all kinds of cool things. The Calgary Cancer Center opening, we are now a leading institution for cancer research and treatment in Western Canada. All of these things bring a different and diverse population and job growth to our city. So that's something that we're always kind of paying attention to, but we are always paying attention to the energy sector as well. And there's a lot of, I wish I had a crystal ball for how the next year is going to go in terms of the energy sector. But I think what we can all agree is that, there's going to be volatility there. And some of it, may actually benefit if you are watching the price of oil. So what do we do for that is constantly monitoring rental trends, adjusting lease terms, thinking ahead. If we know rents are coming down a little bit, let's be proactive with our tenants. Let's offer them some type of incentive to stay or to sign that lease early. And then also keeping cash reserves for downturns, for vacancies, and really thinking ahead of what cash requirements we might need. Okay. Interest rate and financing risk. Rising interest rates have been a big one in the last few years. I've got a lot of questions in years about interest rates. Now, The one benefit of CMHC insured mortgages, which we have used up until now, is the interest rate is driven by the bond rate on CMHC insured mortgages. So that Bank of Canada rate that we're all watching, that is not the rate we're using when it comes to CMHC insured mortgages. However, the bond yield, the 5-year bond yield, has its own set of roller coasters that it is certainly on and is continuing to be on. And so that's something we're watching very closely is what is that bond yield doing? Because there could be a time where it makes more sense to go back to regular interest rates over those CMHC insured rates. So financing risk, kind of goes in line with interest rates. The largest financing risk, in my opinion, is actually CMHC in their ability to change policy so quickly. Their goal is to provide more affordable housing in our country, as well as more accessible housing and improve energy efficiency. That's their mandate, but they are a monopoly in our country in terms of they're the only insurer for multifamily or commercial real estate. So whatever they say goes. And I can't even count the amount of changes they have made in policy over the last 5 years. So they are a financing risk. They're a risk, period. Even during the time of your conditions, you have your application in. If policy changes during that time, we all have to kind of agree right away. There is no grandfather period typically. So that's risks that do, come to mind on the acquisition side. Now, in terms of what we've done on our current portfolio, is we have kept the loan to value relatively low compared to what other groups use, especially using that MLI Select program. So lower loan to values, and then we have locked in our fixed rate mortgages and stagger loan maturities to manage rollover risk. So they do have staggered timelines. Everything is not happening all at once, which is really, really critical. Okay, now operational risk. Now, the operations are managed by the general partner of the limited partner that holds the assets. I know that's kind of getting into the weeds a bit, but we are constantly looking from an operational standpoint how we can reduce risks, how we can reduce costs, and maintain net operating income and improve net operating income. And how we do that is being ahead on our maintenance of our properties. If there's any regulatory or local changes of things we need to be thinking ahead of, like fire code, for example, there's a lot of changes that are always happening. Planning ahead of time for those things on an operational standpoint is really important in terms of cash management, handling any tenant defaults in a very timely manner. I have to give Kaylee very good credit for that. Is she does an excellent job staying on top of defaults, tenant issues, and being really swift with issues that we do encounter. Now we actually have had a good experience with most of our tenants, almost all of them. So that's a big part of it too. Is placing good tenants is a big part of her job. We are doing annual insurance maintenance as well, staffing for property management, just making sure everything is taken care of. And that's how we mitigate that on an ongoing basis. Now, because we are a real estate investment trust, we are governed by the Securities Commission here in Canada. Now, we go by the Ontario Securities Commission. Each province does have their own one. The Ontario one has the highest standards. So that's the one that we follow. And that is something that on an annual basis, we do review our offering memorandum with our legal team, review any changes out in the legislation that applies to us from a regulatory standpoint. Our legal counsel and trustees, we have quarterly meetings reviewing these things and ensuring compliance and any adaptation of new things that we need to do. So that's something we're constantly and ongoing looking at. From a compliance oversight standpoint, our audited financial statements, trustee oversight, and the insurance and liability protection are all things that we do to mitigate risk and financial losses here in WealthShare. Okay, so what's going on for what can we do in terms of talking about strategy here? Why is it doing that? So what we discussed was the economic indicators in terms of Calgary. I get asked often, like, which do we prefer, Calgary or Edmonton in terms of regions? Like I said, we are looking at the surrounding areas, the kind of secondary markets within an hour of Calgary. Prices are a little lower there. There is very good rental demand on the secondary markets and not as much new inventory available. So particularly looking at newer properties in those areas, I think are going to do very well. And just ensuring that there is job growth or job opportunities in those areas. Um, the rental demand, I think will, maintain. We're going to continue seeing that balanced market condition in the mid-range multifamily units. And okay, I am going to just switch to my slides here in a second. But if there's any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But as a little review, kind of, what we are looking to do this year and what our goals are. So we are actively working on a couple acquisitions right now. We are working with our mortgage brokers. We hope to announce something relatively soon, but we are seeing opportunities that the numbers are starting to make sense, that the price points have come to a more reasonable state. There's there's sellers of really nice real estate that we have been in kind of conversations with now for a couple of years that are finally kind of coming to numbers that we think make sense. And what that means and makes sense is we do not want to do an acquisition just for the sake of it. Our goal when we look at a property is to hit a targeted 12% annualized return. That's our goal for you as our investors. So, like I said, last year this just wasn't making sense. This year we should be able to see that. So, our goal this year is a $5 million capital raise. Um, and we have several acquisitions that would be staggered honestly over the next 2 years that we have been working on over the last year. So we look forward to sharing more of those when we can. Unfortunately, we're not quite there. As soon as we do, you will see it announced and out there. But we are looking in the surrounding area of Calgary, in downtown Calgary, Edmonton, and then out in Saskatchewan as well, in Saskatoon and Regina. Namely, Regina, there's a project we're quite interested in there. So that's kind of what the goal is this year. This is what we are excited to build upon. That getting that first 3 years behind us is a really crucial moment of building a strong foundation. But we are just still getting started. We're a relatively small company, but we do have around 300 investors now, and we're excited to kind of grow and expand from there. So that is everything I have. I'm going to pull up one slide, but I'm going to stop this. And if there's any questions, we can address them. Was there questions that wasn't dealt with, Monique? Or?
No questions that yet. Just
Okay.
from Lindsay, I appreciate the patience when allocating cash.
Yeah, that's a big thing. I think the patience is really going to pay off here. The first two acquisitions that we did were court-ordered sales. I think if that opportunity does arise again, that the experience we got as well from going through that on the first two times in a multifamily type of acquisition is really valuable experience that I think is really going to pay off. So show you so this is the current portfolio here. Can you see that? Is it sharing? Yeah, okay. Um, so the first two were court-ordered sales. The third one was actually built by Mattamy Homes in Edmonton. And that, they've all done incredibly well. The first two being court-ordered sales, of course, were a very different process in terms of acquisition. But last year, we did not do any acquisitions, like I kind of mentioned. But I think that'll be changing this year. So just a quick review, kind of like why invest with us. Number one is we have our low minimum investment. I find a lot of investors who have registered funds, especially, have random amounts in random accounts. They have, 10,300 over in this account that they forgot about. So anything over $5,000 you can invest with WealthShare. You can use cash or registered funds. And being able to just diversify into real estate passively with us as your management team, and you like what we're doing, we're here in Alberta, you know where your money's going into these hard assets that you can see, feel, and touch if you like, to get to work in is something that's really appealing to a lot of our investors. Yeah. This was our previous 2 years. We'll be doing our first announcement for 2025 in the coming weeks here. We just finished up our audit, so stay tuned for that. Like I said, but we will be doing that twice this year. I want to point out Atlas One. They are our exempt market dealer, and they are there for very good reason. Number one is they do ensure our compliance, that we are compliant with the appropriate uh, securities commission in each province. Apologies. And they also ensure that you as an investor are making, good financial decisions. So they work independently from us, and they do process all of our investors. Plus, they have a portal housed on their platform that holds all your documents, where we upload our financials and other, relevant things to you as the investor. So, Michael, I don't know if you could put the link in the chat to Atlas One.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Natasha, we got two more questions. One is
Yeah.
from Nadine, which is a great one. Are you mostly looking at newer properties? Do you have an age limit on buildings you will acquire?
Oh, that is a good question. So, um, we don't want to take too much risk. And so, it's not necessarily an age limit, but the older the building, certainly the more variables there tends to be. So our goal is to always is try to stay in that newer range. I mean, we would look at anything that's, probably 10 years or newer. Um, Ideally newer, but it's threading the line of solid, predictable returns without too many variables on the risk side for our investors. So that's really it. I mean, we, never say never, I guess, but we don't want to do big renovations or big projects or add all those variables of what ifs for this particular offering. And
And one
then,
other question from
yeah,
Nelson,
yeah.
and this is also a very good question, is are all the funds invested used for purchase and operations, or are other remaining funds invested in other things?
Sorry, you might need to reread that, or you can answer it.
So
I think
yeah,
I
I
should.
mean, I can answer it as well.
Yeah.
Basically, our OM offering memorandums outlines pretty clearly
Oh, I see.
what capital raise is for, and for this fund, the Class B units that people are investing in, it is pretty strictly for purchasing buy and hold real estate in the multifamily space. So if you're investing with the Class B units, like our general fund is, that's what it's going to be going to. We're at a point where we're pretty active, and so the money that's coming in is being directed to the real estate pretty quickly. We're not really sitting on a surplus. We will keep on hand as we grow a certain amount of capital aside for redemptions, for rainy day fund, all that sort of thing. But that's
Mhm.
the only other use that excess funds would have within this fund.
Yeah, that's a good question too, because I don't know if a lot of people know that in the offering memorandum, whether you're looking at WealthShare or anyone else, they do have to outline the strategy of what the capital is being used for. So we couldn't go and take your capital and invest it in seniors housing or storage or some random thing that's not outlined, like, or, I don't know, short-term rentals or something. We have outlined a pretty, you know, boring strategy in terms of buy and hold long-term multifamily real estate. So yeah, that's a good question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you have three properties now. Their future is to acquire more. So anybody that invests in your company now, we will also be part of the additional purchases?
Yes, that's a good question. Um, so we are a pooled portfolio. So if you invest with us now, you are, taking advantage of what we already have. But yes, whatever we also add in the future. So good question. I think that answers all of it. Yeah. Is that good, Alcina?
Yes.
Okay.
Um, I did open my Atlas one.
Okay.
You inside there's somebody to guide you through the Atlas one because how do I find your Because I
Yeah.
know Atlas One has a lot of other properties.
Mike, yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna hop on.
Can you
Alcina,
put the link?
I'll
Can you
send
put the
that
link
over.
direct to ours?
Of course.
Yeah,
That's
the
the
other thing I would
general link.
suggest, Alcina, if you would like, Michael will include his calendar and invite as well,
Okay.
because that's a great way to do it. He can kind of walk you through some of the onboarding process,
Okay.
and answer any further questions that you have, and talk to you about, what your goals and strategies and things like that are as well.
Here,
Make sure
I'm,
that we fit.
I'm putting the new link in. Apologies. This brings you directly to our offering.
Okay. Got it.
Nelson, are you able to purchase the 2 new buildings now, or you have to wait until you have the 5 million raise? Um, So what we've done in the past is there is a few different ways to do this. Now, we do need to have a certain amount of capital raised. Like there's no doubt about that. To be able to proceed, there is ways to use, short-term liquidity options to be able to help us with acquisitions. But primary goal is to have the capital raised, for sure. And the 2 acquisitions are. One of those might be broken up into 2 different closings as well, which will help stagger things, but it's kind of ongoing, like all at once. It does, like, we obviously cannot close without raising the capital, so we do need to raise capital for sure. But historically also have kind of used a hybrid of ways to do that. So hopefully that makes sense. Thanks, Lindsay. I see Michael has put his Calendly link in there. If you want to go through everything, he can walk you through it step by step in terms of the steps. The only thing I didn't mention earlier about registered funds, which this question gets asked quite a bit, is if you are using registered funds, there is never a fee to invest with us. But if you're using registered funds, an intermediary trust company does need to be used, and they charge an annual fee of about $140 or so a year. So that's their fee, but we don't charge a fee in terms of maintaining your investment. So if you are using registered funds, we're also approved by 3 trust companies. A lot of groups only use Olympia Trust, which we do use, but we also are approved to use Odyssey Trust and Western Pacific. And so all 3 of those companies have approved us as a viable vehicle to invest your registered funds into. Nelson, do you have your own property management company, or is it all contracted? All the property management is in-house, Nelson. There's so many benefits to doing it in-house. It really does provide us every single day a better look at what's going on. When you outsource multifamily real estate, it always feels like you're a couple of months behind, quite honestly. So yeah, that's something that we take great pride in, is managing everything in-house. Thank you, Nadine. Yeah, conservative, slow and steady. That's certainly what it's always about. Redemption is outlined as well. So inside of the first 5 years, there is a redemption period. Now, sorry, a redemption fee, and it's a sliding scale that comes down year after year. The last year, it's a 1%, just as an example. There is no lock-in period, like you have to stay locked in for 3 years. We understand, like, things happen, and we are an open fund. So things happen, people exit, we've had death, divorce, and also just life happens, right? So you're not locked in. There is a 60-day redemption notice. You have to give a formal notice of redemption to begin the process. And that can be done through your exempt market dealer as well. Where do redemption funds come from? We do keep a certain amount of capital available for redemptions on a monthly basis. So that's part of our management of funds.
It's also
Thanks, Terry.
stipulated in the OM.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, if you want to review the OM, anyone, or John, and if you can't find it, let us know. But it is available on the Atlas One platform, or it will still be on RealShare as well. But the OM is available there. You can download it. It's about a couple hundred pages of reading material for you, so it's available to anyone at any time. we shall call it there. I appreciate everyone being here. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for joining. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great evening. Good night. Please reach out to Michael, anything you need.